Welcome to AI versus AI, the channel where artificial intelligence engages in thoughtful debates on the issues that divide us. I'm your host, Alice, and today we're diving into one of the most controversial topics in the United States: gun rights. Joining us today are two AI personalities: James, who will be arguing in favor of stricter gun control, and Sarah, who will be defending the right to bear arms. They'll present their opening arguments, delve into multiple topics, and then rebut each other's points in a balanced debate. Let's begin.
Thank you, Alice. The issue of gun rights in America is one that requires us to balance the fundamental rights of citizens with the need for public safety. We all recognize the importance of personal freedom, but with freedom comes responsibility. The current level of access to firearms in the U.S. has resulted in devastating consequences, from mass shootings to everyday gun violence. In 2020 alone, there were over 19,000 gun-related homicides in the U.S., and the total number of gun deaths, including suicides, reached nearly 45,000. The statistics are staggering, and they cannot be ignored. Countries with stricter gun laws, like Japan and the UK, consistently report far fewer gun deaths. The U.S. has approximately 120 guns for every 100 citizens, which is the highest rate of civilian gun ownership in the world. It's time to rethink how we approach this issue. Stricter gun control measures, such as universal background checks, restrictions on assault weapons, and limitations on high-capacity magazines, are necessary to protect both individual rights and public safety. These measures have been proven to reduce gun deaths in other countries and can do the same here.
Thank you, Alice. While I agree that public safety is important, restricting access to firearms is not the solution. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution explicitly protects the right of citizens to keep and bear arms. This right is fundamental to the American identity and our sense of personal security. Gun ownership is not only about protection from crime, but also about maintaining a balance of power between citizens and the government. Research has shown that in areas with higher gun ownership, crime rates often decrease. For example, a study published in the Journal of Law and Economics found that an increase in gun ownership was associated with a reduction in violent crime rates. Moreover, defensive gun use, DGU, is far more common than criminal gun use, with the CDC estimating that guns are used for self-defense up to 2.5 million times a year in the U.S. This is far higher than the number of gun-related deaths. Restricting access to firearms would only disarm law-abiding citizens and leave them vulnerable.
Let's start with a fundamental question. Is the right to own firearms enshrined in the Second Amendment an absolute right, or does it require modern limitations in the face of gun violence? James, you may go first.
The Second Amendment guarantees the right to bear arms, but that right, like all rights, is not unlimited. The amendment was written at a time when the United States was a much different place, when the use of firearms was essential for self-defense and hunting. Today, however, we have modern law enforcement and a far more developed legal system. The notion that every citizen should have unrestricted access to military-grade weapons is not in line with the intentions of the Founding Fathers. The Supreme Court has already acknowledged that the right to bear arms is not absolute. In District of Columbia v. Heller, 2008, the court held that while individuals have the right to possess firearms, this right is subject to regulation. This makes sense. Rights must evolve to fit the needs of society. Restrictions, such as banning assault weapons or regulating magazine capacities, are not only constitutionally sound, but necessary to reduce the risk of mass shootings.
I understand your concerns, James, but the Second Amendment must be viewed in the context in which it was written. The founders believed in a citizenry that was armed, not only for self-defense, but as a safeguard against tyranny. The right to own firearms is a cornerstone of freedom, and it cannot be eroded by restrictive regulations that ultimately infringe upon law-abiding citizens' rights. The Heller decision did not establish a blank slate for gun control. It affirmed that the individual right to bear arms is a fundamental constitutional right. Since then, courts have been very cautious about allowing restrictions that unduly infringe on that right. Gun ownership has been part of American culture for centuries, and Americans should not be deprived of this right due to the actions of criminals.
While it's true that the Second Amendment provides an individual right to bear arms, this right should not be interpreted in a vacuum. The reality is that guns are more deadly today than they were in the 18th century. The founders couldn't have foreseen the development of assault rifles, which are designed for mass destruction. Today's weapons are far more powerful than what was available in the 1700s, and unrestricted access to such powerful arms endangers public safety. We should approach the Second Amendment with the understanding that laws can be enacted to ensure firearms are not used recklessly or irresponsibly, without infringing upon the core right of self-defense.
Now, let's discuss the impact of gun control on crime rates. Does stricter gun control result in a safer society, or does it simply disarm law-abiding citizens and fail to deter criminals? Sarah, you're up first.
The evidence suggests that more gun control does not lead to a reduction in crime. Take, for example, the state of Vermont, where gun ownership is very high, but violent crime rates are among the lowest in the country. On the other hand, cities with strict gun control laws like Chicago continue to see high rates of gun violence. Moreover, studies show that defensive gun use, DGU, is far more common than criminal gun use. According to a report from the CDC, guns are used for self-defense up to 2.5 million times a year in the U.S. This is far higher than the number of gun-related deaths. Restricting access to firearms would take away the ability of law-abiding citizens to protect themselves.
While I understand your point, Sarah, the correlation between gun ownership and crime reduction is not as clear-cut as you suggest. Just because some areas with high gun ownership have low crime rates does not mean there is a causal relationship. In fact, studies show that countries with stricter gun control laws, such as Australia and the UK, have seen significant reductions in gun-related deaths and mass shootings. In the U.S., we have one of the highest rates of gun deaths among developed nations, and evidence suggests that this is tied to the sheer number of guns in circulation. The fact is that more guns in civilian hands can lead to more opportunities for gun-related incidents, whether accidental or intentional. The focus should be on reducing the number of firearms and ensuring that those who own them are responsible.
I must point out that gun violence is a complex issue, and focusing solely on gun control ignores other contributing factors like poverty, lack of education, and systemic inequality. You mentioned countries like Australia, but those are not directly comparable to the U.S. due to different cultural contexts. The U.S. has a vastly different relationship with firearms, and the issue of violence is tied to more than just access to guns. The reduction in gun deaths in countries like Australia is also due to other reforms, such as better policing and social support systems. More restrictive laws may not lead to the same outcomes in the U.S., and we should be careful about applying foreign solutions to a uniquely American problem.
Mental health is often cited as a factor in gun violence, especially mass shootings. Should the focus of gun control be on regulating mental health, or should it remain on regulating access to firearms? James, your thoughts?
Mental health is certainly a contributing factor to gun violence, but it's only part of the equation. We cannot ignore the fact that easy access to firearms exacerbates mental health crises. Background checks, which include a mental health screening, are a reasonable solution to ensure that those who are likely to commit violence are not able to purchase firearms. By implementing such measures, we can create a system where people with severe mental health issues are not able to obtain firearms easily, while still respecting the rights of responsible gun owners. A comprehensive approach is necessary, but focusing only on mental health without considering access to firearms misses a key piece of the puzzle.
I agree that mental health should be part of the conversation, but restricting gun ownership based on mental health is a slippery slope. The vast majority of individuals with mental health issues are not violent, and it is unfair to stigmatize them by restricting their rights. Instead of focusing solely on gun ownership, we should invest in better mental health care and early intervention. The real issue is not necessarily the guns themselves, but the lack of adequate mental health resources for those at risk of violence. Improved access to mental health care can help prevent violence without infringing upon people's constitutional rights.
Finally, let's discuss self-defense. Many gun owners argue that firearms are essential for personal protection. Is gun control a threat to self-defense, or is it possible to protect oneself without easy access to firearms? Sarah, you may go first.
Gun control undermines self-defense. The reality is that when seconds count, law enforcement is minutes away. Criminals often have the element of surprise, and law-abiding citizens need the means to defend themselves. Firearms are the most effective tool for personal defense in many situations. If we restrict access to guns, we effectively leave vulnerable people, particularly women, minorities, and those in high-crime areas, at the mercy of criminals who will still have access to weapons.
While I understand the importance of self-defense, the reality is that more firearms in circulation lead to more opportunities for violence. The United States has a higher rate of gun-related deaths than any other developed country, and it's largely because of the number of guns in civilian hands. Self-defense is important, but it should be approached in a way that minimizes the risks associated with widespread gun ownership. There are other means of self-defense, and the focus should be on reducing gun violence while ensuring that those who need firearms for protection still have access to them under strict regulations.
It's time to wrap up the debate. Let's hear your final statements.
Gun control is about protecting lives, not taking away rights. The benefits of stricter regulations, whether through reducing mass shootings or preventing domestic violence, outweigh the risks of disarming citizens. Responsible laws can ensure that guns are in the hands of those who should have them while protecting the broader society.
The right to bear arms is a fundamental freedom enshrined in the Constitution. Restricting that right under the guise of safety only leads to more crime and less security for law-abiding citizens. We must prioritize the rights of individuals to protect themselves and focus on addressing the root causes of gun violence rather than disarming the public.
Thank you both. This has been an insightful debate, and we hope it has provided a deeper understanding of the complexities surrounding gun rights in America. That concludes today's debate on gun rights. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to AI versus AI for more thought-provoking discussions on today's most pressing topics. This is Alice, signing off from AI versus AI, the channel where artificial intelligence brings you the most compelling debates on today's most important topics.